In this video, we're going to be looking at a few typical exam questions on sharing in ratio. In my first question, Rosa is making some pizza and she's using cheese, topping and dough in the ratio 2 to 3 to 5. Ratios are always given respectively, which means that the way that the words are given is the way that the numbers are given as well. So we know that cheese to topping to dough is in the ratio 2 to 3 to 5. We know that Rose is using 70 grams of dough in total. So what I need to do is I need to work out how I get from dough, which is 5 in the ratio, up to 70. And what I'm going to do is do a simple division. I'll do 70 divided by 5. As a quick tip, to divide by 5, you can divide by 10 and times by 2. 70 divided by 10 is 7, times by 2 is 14. So I'm multiplying my ratio by 14. I'm going to take this and times everything by 14. 2 times 14 is 28. 3 times 14 is 42. And 5 times 14 is obviously 70. That means that she uses 28 grams of cheese, 42 grams of topping, and 70 grams of dough, remembering that ratio is given respectively. So cheese is the first one. Topping is the second one, dough is the third one. In my next question, we have 5 schools sending some students to a conference. One school sends both boys and girls, and they send 16 boys in total. So let's write that down to start with. They send 16 boys. The ratio that they send from boys to girls is 1 to 2. So immediately, before we do anything else, we can work out how many girls there are, because chances are this question is going to require that. If 16 is 1, we're timesing that ratio by 16, and therefore the 2 is 32. We're times by 16. 16 boys, 32 girls. Now, we know that the other 4 schools sends only girls. Each of the 5 schools sends the same number of students. So a good thing to do is to work out how many students are sent from the one school that we already know. Well, they send 16 boys and 32 girls, which means that there are 48 students sent in total from that one school. 5 schools are sending the same number of students. Therefore, in total, which is what we want to work out, we will need to work out 5 times 48. Well, how to do that in our heads quickly? We know that 5 times 50 is 250. 5 times 2 is 10. If I subtract them, I get 5 times 48, which would be 240. And in my last question, Pat and Julie are sharing some money in the ratio 2 to 5. And Julie gets £45 more than Pat. So if the ratio Pat to Julie is given 2 to 5, remember it's respective, so Pat then Julie, 2 then 5, Julie gets £45 more than Pat. So what we need to do is work out how many more shares she gets. Well, 5 minus 2 is 3. So that means that 3 shares is worth £45. If 3 shares is worth £45, you can find out what 1 share is just by dividing by 3. That gives me 15. So 1 share is worth £15, and we need to work out how much money Pat gets. Well, Pat has 2 shares in the ratio, so therefore she gets £30, because 2 times 15 is 30. If you wanted to know how much Julie made, you'd do 5 times 15, which would be 75. But for this question, just for Pat, we have 2 times 15,